Welcome to the Rest of Us podcast. Ernesto Rivera is in the house again, and we were just talking about the weirdest comedy show he's ever been to.
Yeah, cool, because you mentioned their podcast, right? Like Bad Friends. And I went to their comedy show like...
When was this?
Maybe like a year ago or something. They came to Atlanta. And the comedy show itself was like pretty normal. Bobby Lee goes first, Santino goes second. And Santino's like the funnier one. And then at the end, they do like a Q&A thing. And all their fans are like... see the podcast, like they're, all into it and stuff. And all right, so here's the least weird thing that happened in the post show is this guy, they would invite people to come up based on like submissions, right? So like this couple goes up and the guy is basically like, he just is pitching to the audience that his wife should let him do anal. In a comedy, like filled with like thousands of people.
And this is the Q&A.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what is happening? The next couple, the guy proposes. And I'm like, how, like this is insane. The next one goes up and it's like a lady who's by herself. And she's like, oh, my husband gave me a hall pass for Bobby Lee tonight. And I'm like, this cannot get crazier. Like, and he's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, like I'm around, like he's out of town. Like, just let me know. She's like 50. Looks pretty good. She's like 50. They switch shirts in like on stage. Cause apparently like Bobby Lee collects like vintage t-shirts. You know what I mean? How like that's a thing. And then for the grand finale, someone, apparently this is the thing he does, he like just turned around and showed his asshole to the entire audience. Like pulled his pants down, like spread his ass apart. Like for a long time. Like not for a little bit.
And then
do you know
weren't
what I mean?
a fan anymore.
I literally like when that happened, they had more things to be done. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't over yet. And I was like, we need to leave. Like I don't like, you know what I mean? It was crazy. The show itself was funny, but I was just like, You ever been a part of something that you like and you're ashamed of the other people who like it?
Yeah.
That's how it felt.
I feel
I was
like
like, I don't want to be a part of this group of people.
this is how I feel about country music.
Yeah.
I like country
but
music.
music is a thing that you do usually by yourself.
Yes, and you connect to it. But then I don't want anyone to know that I like it because then you see people who like go to country music concerts, and every time I've been to one, it's just been like a bunch of like drunk frat guys like in the front and like drunk sorority girls almost. And then I'm like, ugh, but the people, I just don't want to be lumped into that.
Yeah.
So
I like country music, but like very select. Like, have you ever heard Coulter Wall? Mm-mm. He's got maybe the most insane voice I've ever heard in my life. It's like insanely deep. And he did his first album when he was like 19. And he sounds like he's been chain smoking cigarettes since like, the 1800s. And he has like his first ever like, I guess, interview was this guy who does like music interviews in the backseat of his car. Like he would drive and the person's in the back. It's a weird concept. And he like starts singing and you're almost like incredulous to the fact that that's what's coming out of him. You know what I mean? You're like, how is this your voice?
You don't look like it.
It's crazy. But anyway, I don't really like country music, but I like his music. And he's got like very dark songs. Like,
is it like kind of folksier, more folksy, or?
I mean, yeah.
Versus like pop. I feel like there's like the pop. There's like the.
I've never really heard much country, to be fair, but yeah, it's like it's very dark. Like he has songs about like very morbid things, but yeah, it's good.
I could be there for that.
It's good.
Luke and I only recently. It's almost like we felt like we listened to everything, and then one day I was like cleaning the house and just put on country music. I was like, oh, that's a nice song. I just started making a playlist, and then I have like 50 songs on a country playlist that I like now. Yeah,
I'm always like I don't know. I feel like I go through periods where I don't learn anything new in terms of music, and then I'll find a thing, and it's always so exciting, Mm-hmm. Like I remember for the first time, I was like, I must have been. This was like 2010 or something. So I was 14 years younger than I am now. So whatever that is, 14. Yeah,
teenager.
Yeah, so I was 14, and I remember the first time I heard a Kanye West album. This would have been when like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy came out, which was 2010. So it was like Watch the Throne, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and I had got to listen to like College Dropout and all for the first time. And it was just like surreal, you know what I mean? Like, how do I get to experience all this, Every
but you once in a while, like I still come across old Kanye, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah. But anyway, like I love doing that. So like when you discover like a new artist, and you're like, oh man, I get to experience a thing for the first time. I don't know. I actually like delay stuff that I know is good for that reason. Like my friend's been trying to get me to watch a lot of TV shows for a long time, like one of my close friends. And one of those was True Detective season 1. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't, but also people do rave about True Detective.
Yeah. So like I knew for a long time that it was good, and I trust his opinion. And so he was like, hey, season 1 True Detective, like maybe one of the best seasons of television ever. And I was like, I mean, this came out in 2013 or 14, right? So it's been a long time. And I recently saw it, and it is the best season of television I've ever seen. Like
That was also
potentially.
when, was that True Detective was HBO or something like that?
True Detective
Showtime
is HBO.
HBO,
yeah.
okay.
And that was like a crazy time in TV because Breaking Bad is 2013, I think.
That's
True
crazy
Detective.
because that feels like recent history because we
Game of
were
Thrones,
together already by
yeah.
then.
Game of Thrones was on air. So Breaking Bad, True Detective, Game of Thrones. I think Silicon Valley. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like a comedy. I think that was like it was just like every TV show.
This is how long
air.
I've been an actor. I remember using scenes from stuff like this in acting classes.
Yeah. But
It's just
anyway,
so
I
old.
put off True Detective because like I want to have that experience as an adult because you only get it once. You know?
Yeah,
You don't
they say this about books too. Is you only get to read a book for the first time once.
I think books are different.
I've read books 3 or 4 times, but I do feel like it's different.
It is different. I think because like
Go like
books.
this.
Oh, what do I have? Like sauce?
Yep.
Some cream.
Yeah, some cream.
I'll cut that
That's
out.
why I didn't use that word.
Not Rachel over here with the straw.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like books are different because, like, they're just, one, they usually take longer in some way, I think, depending on the book you're reading, you know? And, like, TV shows, like, they're presented to you.
Not
know?
me. I have a problem. I smoke books. I binge books.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not an avid reader. I'm, like, a messy reader. In
What's
the sense,
that
like,
mean?
I read many books at once, you know?
What are you reading?
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. All right. I'm reading a book called
Why do you look so embarrassed?
Me?
Yeah. He's like turning red.
Well, because I think like it's like a portal into like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like
not
personal.
many things describe somebody than like what kind of shit they read. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm reading this book called The Trading Game. It was given to me by a coworker. It's about this trader for Citibank who like made a bunch of money like basically like selling dollar long and buying it back short. Anyway, I'm reading a book called, what is it called? It's about hedge funds. I don't remember the name.
Your job is like in finance or something. No.
No.
Is this the one that was like on that you had with you on the trip?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was either.
Yeah, it's called Black Edge. It's called The Black Edge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like just into that. I'm reading like on and off. I read this book. It's like Seneca's Letters to Lucilius. It's a philosophy book. That book is like
Is it dry? Is it
Well,
like
it's-
translated legitimate old stuff or is it about
no,
the
it's
letters?
it's a good translation. No,
Oh.
they are the letters
Okay.
themselves, but there's like
you know how like sometimes there's the real stuff and then there's a commentary?
No. It's like the actual letters. It's like 400 letters that Seneca wrote to a friend, Lucilius, who like lived in, I guess, like ancient Sicily. And the letters themselves are short, like, 2 or 3 pages on different topics, but there's, 200 of them or something. So I'll just like read a couple and then go back.
They
and,
were just friends, but I guess they didn't have text messaging. So
well, it was weird because there was 2-way communication, but it was basically one way, And it was one of those books that like letters was the format, but Seneca knew that he was gonna, you know what I mean? Like
it was going to be public.
he was
people were
writing
gonna
to
read
the
it.
world,
Yeah.
but really writing to his friend. You know what I mean? What else am I reading right now?
I mean, I guess that's kind of like the Bible. They're like writing to a group of people.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah,
going to
that's
get read.
Yeah. And I have
Any
like
fiction?
no, I'm like notoriously bad at reading fiction. I can't do it. I think I'm too dumb or something. I don't like.
I used to never read fiction.
Really?
Well, I was a history major in college, which is my biggest regret because you can read a book for free. But I always used to be like, oh, I only read nonfiction. And then when I started reading fiction, I just started tearing through books. But
Really?
yeah. It's not great. Like it's,
No, I know.
yeah, it's not great. Because
I
I
know.
told you what I'm reading.
I've sampled like some fiction
really
books,
just
like the
love
fancy cover
rom-coms,
ones. You know what
yeah.
I'm talking about? None of them are good.
I like the romance ones and I like the comedy of it because I think I like the romance genre because it's a happy ending and you just know it's going to go like in a good direction. And so
Yeah.
you can kind of just like turn off and whatever
Yeah.
versus like if you're watching something like Game of Thrones, everyone's going to die. It's a different kind of energy that you're expending. So I like putting my brain on kind of like autopilot when I read them.
Yeah, I try not to be cynical when people say like that they read, but I do have like a gripe with people who are like, oh, like yeah, like I read a lot, like I'm an avid reader, and they'll kill like 50 books a year, and I'm like, all right, what did you read? And it's just like all the same like fantasy, pseudo like porn novel. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm like, no, you don't read.
Hold on.
You just
I have to stop you with that,
totally,
though. I have to stop at the porn thing because this makes you sound like you're from like a conservative upbringing because you watch Game of Thrones and sure, there's like sex scenes and naked people, but the whole thing's not about that. You'll read like a lot of these like romantic comedies or even the fantasy ones, and the sex is probably maybe less than 10% of the pages.
My point being is like I don't think you get to say like I read a lot if you just read the same book.
Well, I do have a problem with the young adult genre because it is targeted at young adult. The banter and the dialogue drives me crazy. I'm like, it even takes me out of it just because supposedly you're writing these like 900-year-old people. I'm like, I'm only 35 and the way you're talking makes me want to leave the room. But of course, like teenagers are like eating this stuff up. Yeah. So then you have like the teenagers reading it and then, but when you do it, you're like, you guys are annoying.
Yeah.
You're so annoying.
I don't know, but I guess fiction again. God damn. All right.
I did it to you. I'm sorry. I offered.
I need a straw. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I would like to be an avid reader and be able to focus for a long period of time, but I end up just like hopping between stuff. And eventually I do finish books.
Maybe you could do like a finance thriller or something.
Interesting. What happens? Like,
I don't know.
Credit spreads widen out and somebody gets horny. Like, that's not very exciting.
I'm assuming those
Finance
ones
is
don't
like so-
have 10% smut in it, okay?
I just got delivered a straw. This is what it feels like to be rich.
This is what it felt like to be those celebrities backstage at the thing. Oh, do you need water? What kind?
Yeah.
Fiji? Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to be pretentious one day when I have a lot of money.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be. I don't know.
That's part of the thing. You have to be.
I always feel like even when people have to take my breakfast order on set, I'm like,
yeah, I don't. Anytime somebody's
Me?
like, yeah, I've never been on a set, but
it's the most stratified social culture you'll ever see. For people who claim to be so progressive, you will never have more of a stratified culture than on set. Oh, speaking role? Okay, here's like, let's take your breakfast order. Oh, you're an extra? I really hope you want like the lemonade packet lemonade that comes out of the Gatorade dispenser.
Yeah, what was it like was it Nolan or one of these directors who like is famous for like if say like it's cold, every extra has to have the same jacket he has or he just won't wear one.
Oh.
So he like wants like equal treatment because it's apparently very brutal, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah.
he's like,
especially in Atlanta. Like I had friends who kind of almost made a career out of being like a SAG extra in LA or they were, what's the other thing you could do? Stand-in, which is kind of like in the same category. And that's really regular work. You could, if you're a regular stand-in on a TV show that runs like 5 seasons, you're like 23 years old. That's pretty decent money that you're always getting paid to like go to work and do the thing. But here it's like $64 over 8. Like it's
$64.
It's like $8 an hour here.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And what's the hope with that? Like that you just, or it's just like broke college students that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, sometimes it's like retired people. They just want to be around movies.
Okay.
Or something. I don't like, I did it one time in Atlanta because they like bumped the rate to double even more than like the 64. And like, it was going to be 2 days in a row of work and I wasn't doing anything. This is like when I first landed here. And after that, I was like, it was a Halloween scene and we were all in like slutty Halloween costumes and it was 30 degrees outside. And I was like, I'm never doing this again.
I've never been an extra in anything, but you know, like those delusions that you have of like things you'd be good at. I feel like acting would be one of them. I obviously would not be a good actor, but I want to try it.
You should do it.
Yeah.
Watch. Like Rachel has tried for like over 10 years, doesn't book anything. Lucas is laughing because he knows. I tell him this. I tell Lucas that he should audition. Lucas almost made more money for my agents than me because he like books so many Real Carpenter commercials and like he's where all of the money comes from.
You know, I don't know his actual name, but in Silicon Valley, the guy who plays Jin Yang, he's like the Asian guy. He's a comedian. I don't know his actual name, but anyway, he has a bit in stand-up comedy that basically his dad, like a family of doctors and stuff, were like, oh, like, comedy, acting, all that is easy. And he was like, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. And his dad started booking like big roles and became insanely successful. And then was just like, look, you asshole, like, look how easy it is.
Look,
and he has like this whole bit about it.
You speak at least, 3 languages fluently at this point?
I'd say like 2.8, but yeah.
2.8 languages fluently. You are a jiu-jitsu black belt. You definitely have potential.
But there's no jiu-jitsu in acting.
This is what I tell everybody because everyone's like, why don't you do stunts? I'm like, so they can see me hug people. Like, like all the people who do stunts like can do like crazy falls or they have like
and
their
none of
splits.
it is like a lot. It's specific to stunt work. You know, it's not like it's a skill in itself. I think it's not like
there's nothing more cringe than watching stunt people
fight.
I don't want to misspeak to the entire community of professionals or anything like that, but let's say aspiring stunt people. Let's not even say real stunt people who work regularly, but watching somebody just even do like an S-mount armbar who does not.
Yeah.
It's like, even if they've done jujitsu, I'm like, you're a 7-month white belt doing
yeah.
S-mount armbar.
Yeah. But the
from
public can't
1990.
tell the difference. And
No.
It's all like.
But you feel it when you watch
There's
it.
only like one franchise I got that right. I think is like the John Wick franchise.
Yeah.
Because he cares. Like Keanu cares. I think they have like really good stuff. Like
even
really,
like the
really
guns
good.
and stuff. Lucas said the same
Yeah,
thing because
it's
he was in
good.
the military.
It's good.
Yeah.
And they have like. They still do like if you're like a gun person and you watch, they have like bad trigger discipline and they like muzzle each other all the time. So it's not perfect, but the jujitsu is impressive.
Yeah.
Like it's good. Like
And it like made it look nice and
you
all
could
the
tell
things.
they like care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is nice. I don't know. I
Everything
love that
feels like it should be
franchise.
like that. I'm like, how much more does that cost? I wonder.
The problem is it's like doesn't drive bottom line probably. You know what I mean?
I don't
clearly
know. I
not,
feel like
because you get,
everybody's mentioned it.
Yeah. You
In
get
the
like,
action world, I feel like everybody's mentioned it.
yeah, but then you got like I think I don't know. John Wick was like refreshing in action because after like the Bourne movies, which was like 2006, right? The first Bourne movie.
Definitely like when I was in high school.
They did like I saw this thing that was like before the Bourne movies, the average cut in an action movie was like X time, and after the Bourne movies, because the Bourne movies had like a cut every like less than a second. Like
How do you know this?
I really like movies.
Okay.
I don't know, but yeah. So they basically like revolutionized how action was shot because essentially like you have to get less good coverage is my guess. You know what I mean? Because if all your shots are 0.9 seconds, you don't really need that much. So anyway.
Yeah.
After the Bourne movies, I think you got a lot of that. Like if you watch like Mission Impossible after that, like all these movies. And I think John Wick, they brought back like the long action take, like Jackie Chan style.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that requires like really good choreography, really good people, like really good stunt. It's just like
Doing
harder.
anything in one long take is so
Exactly,
hard
yeah.
for things to not go
Yeah,
wrong.
like if you watch like Bruce Lee or like Jackie Chan, like at his peak, like it's insane. Like they have like minute long takes of action. It's like that's impossible. Like
Yeah.
you need to have like a master of that thing. You know what I mean?
Even like if you have like to do a long take and a long monologue, you're like, I have to say all these words and not mess
Yeah.
them up and like do it really well.
Yeah. Speaking of long takes, in True Detective, maybe has the best single tracking shot I've ever seen in my life.
What
It's
season or what?
season one.
Season
so
one?
It's
Okay.
only 8 episodes, and it's an anthology series, so they don't link.
Okay.
And it's like episode 4 or 5, and it's basically like a house break-in / chase scene, and it's like a 4 or 5 minute shot.
Is this like the kind where like they break it and they do it and you watch like the behind the scenes and everyone's like moving set pieces so the cameras
No,
can't
it's
go
just
around?
like it's a camera on a gimbal following Matthew McConaughey's character through this gunfire and gunfight, and it's riveting because like you can escalate tension in a lot of ways, but like the fact that you're following him and stuck on him, it's really good. Like
That's
you don't
how I
even have to
felt,
watch the show; you can just watch the scene.
Did you ever watch the movie 1917?
Yeah.
And like that, it was a different level of anxiety when you had to follow them around and you couldn't see all the other things
Yeah.
in the different shots.
Yeah, that's Deakins. He was the director of photography. He's a genius in a lot of ways. Like, I don't know. I don't know. The thing is, too, like that movie had to be shot that way for it to be good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
But that was part of what made that movie so great was,
Yeah.
and it was like the thing they bragged about, like when they like released it. I ended up seeing like a screening for it because my friend had tickets to a screening and I didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah.
And when I watched it, I was like, this is one of the most amazing movies I've ever
Yeah.
seen, not knowing anything about it. And I was like, oh, Christopher Nolan and like all the things.
yeah. Well, so
Right?
No, so 1917. Actually,
Not.
I don't know the writer or the director, but the director of photography is Roger Deakins.
Okay, yeah.
And he's like, Blade Runner, Sicario, 1917, Shawshank Redemption, like every movie.
I'm like, Luke, look it up. Now it's going to drive me crazy.
Who the director is?
Yeah.
I have no
You
idea.
can't because we're doing our
Is 19? No. You're thinking of Dunkirk. Dunkirk.
I am
is
thinking
Nolan.
of Dunkirk.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am because I watched.
Yeah.
Someone was like, "Watch Dunkirk right after
Dunkirk
that."
is Nolan. No,
Yeah.
1917 is some guy, but
I hate that I don't know that.
all of the Deakins movies are incredible. He's a master.
I'm glad that we at least know the director of photography.
Yeah. It's interesting too because he's like, I don't know if he's like old, like 70 something, and he's like very much not a purist in terms of like shooting on film, whereas like all the other big directors and stuff are like Tarantino.
I wonder.
Nolan,
I wonder if it's more of like a style thing or if it's just. Like, even when I was in college and I had a really old professor, they were still using the overhead machines,
Yeah.
like with the vis-a-vis pens,
No, I mean,
and they're just used to it? Or is
no,
it
it's a
they
quality thing, right? Like that's why like Nolan wants to shoot on 70 millimeter IMAX, and Tarantino the same. But I've heard Deakins talk about it, and he just basically says that like a lot of the stuff he's doing, you can't shoot on film. you can't shoot a one take movie on film. You know what I mean? Or like you can't have a 30-minute, like the roll's over.
Yeah.
You know, so like you have to shoot it on digital.
Oh, that's so funny. What
yeah.
a different. Can you imagine, like, I don't know, going from the transition between the two?
I mean, they used to cut film like and like stitch it together. You know, like now like you can like all digitally upload, edit it, and then put it back on film to like actually project it, which nothing gets projected on film anymore. But
that's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's how much I don't know about movie making. That's how much I was not meant to do that side of things.
Yeah, movie making is crazy. Like, when
video in general is crazy. Like, even everyone asks me if I want to do video or like doing video. I'm like, no, I don't. It's such a different.
Like video production?
Yeah, just or video, because I like taking jujitsu photography, and everyone just wants like those nice, really cool video shots of their competitions, and I'm like, I just don't want to do it.
Yeah,
there are people at my gym who are currently doing it that are and I'm so proud of them, but I'm like, I have no desire. It's the data wrangling for me. I'm like, really? I just don't want all of the big files, and I don't want to have to process them, and don't want to have to deal with them and save them and all of the things.
I want to be like a successful screenwriter so I can get really good people to do this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And like not have to do it myself.
That's where I am with this podcast. Spencer, please produce it.
Yeah, he will, or he might. I don't know.
Sit here. I don't know if he's gonna listen to this episode, but Spencer, please produce my podcast.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a wizard with all that kind of stuff.
He's so good at it. Yeah, and he also thoroughly enjoys it. And one of the things that I've always struggled with on my side of, because I've always been like front of camera, is finding people who genuinely like to do the back of camera things and not just do back of camera things so they could be in front of the camera.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because like it taints like all of the projects. Like the project, it's not about the story, it's about the person in the story.
Yeah.
I'm like, sorry if this is like shit talking anybody, but after like over 10 years as an actor, everyone in my community, like I watch their pieces and I'm like, you watch it and you're like, there's something off about this story, and then you could just totally tell they wrote it for themselves.
Yeah.
And then did all the things, and they have the skills. And, it's really hard to do all of those things. So that is impressive, but it's just not the same story as if you were just like writing from your imagination and like wanted a story for the story itself.
Well, that's like, I think like one of the things that's hard to do, like to break out of if you want to like screenwrite or even write like, regular like long form stuff, is when you start writing characters that just don't sound like you.
Yeah.
Because your intuition is because you are you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's also my problem with some of the young adult stuff is if you read it, sometimes you can't tell who's talking because they all talk the same.
They all speak the same. Yeah.
And it all sounds like a white woman who's 31.
Well, that's why there's no like there's like a couple of good dialogue writers in all of film. You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to do good dialogue, and even amongst the good ones, it's hard to differentiate sometimes their characters. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like Tarantino's really good at writing dialogue, but a lot of them are like the same person in some way.
That's why improv is so interesting, because improv has always led to so much good writing because the way that they do the art form. It was originally an art form that was used to write things. And I can understand because each person has a point of view and then they start doing it. And then there's all these like rules when you do improv. Like you can't.
It's like yes and, right?
It's yes and, but there's like little things like you can't talk, like if you're doing a scene, you can't talk about what you're doing in the scene. So if we're washing dishes, we can't be like, hand me, it'll just be like.
Because that's totally unnatural.
Yeah. Like if you're washing dishes and you're talking about, you can't talk about somebody else who's not in the room. You have to make it about each other. Like, I'm so mad you're cheated on me, or like some kind of strong statement that has nothing to do with the dishes. But you're doing the dishes the whole time because it like keeps it natural. Or like, and you'd be surprised when you watch classes where it's like one of the tasks or prompts that they give people is like you're sorting out screws, and like they still talk about the screws.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard when you're getting used to it. But the more you do it, the more you get into the right mode, and then you'll see how dialogue helps. Or like you're not supposed to, when you start a scene, you're supposed to give like a who, what, where, why, when. And then one of my teachers actually added like a how you feel about it to something. And so that way, instead of being like, hi, welcome to McDonald's, you could just say, do you want fries with that? And you know exactly a lot of information about the scene. And it was like a piece of dialogue that had nothing to do with, hey, welcome to like, this fast food place. So would you like to blah, blah, blah.
You see that all the time too. And like, if you read like amateur screenplays, like including, stuff that like anybody writes, you'll have like exposition for the sake of exposition. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like hiding exposition is impossible.
Jokes. They'll make like jokes within the exposition that no one's gonna read that. Yeah. I read something. I want to say it was like a blog. A blog that maybe came from like an excerpt from a book, but somebody had used. I want to say it was like the first scene of Saving Private Ryan, and it showed the screenplay. Yep. And it was like, if it's not like a sound or something that you see, like it doesn't belong in the screenplay and the exposition. So it was like a bomb burst, and like you see this come across the screen, and then it's like dialogue. And then it went through that, and it was just saying like, look how much more dynamic and interesting this is from the first page. versus like, and then same thing with when I went to like the writers conference on Romance Writers of America conference, because I like romance that much. One of the speakers who was in one of the sessions said that like she always tries to just start the beginning of her books with like an action dialogue, because it just brings you in it.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because like you read like good stuff and even like really good stuff, like we were talking about John Wick earlier, and like the reason that's so good is like, for example, like the opening like couple of scenes, right, where it's like basically you need to care about this character's heartbreak for the story to work, and you could talk about that all day, or you could have a dog show up at his door that his wife left him after he passed, which has no dialogue, and you immediately are like, oh, if anything happens to this dog, I will literally follow the story forever. Yeah. Exactly. But it's like, that's really hard to do.
That's also like, I mean, you'll even see big budget movies where somebody dies and you're like, I don't care, move on.
Yeah.
I don't care about this person.
Yeah.
But like they all have to have their, what do they call it? Like the save the cat moment. I don't know if you've ever read Save the Cat.
I haven't read it, but
Yeah, it's like one of the ones that they reference all the time. They make a bunch of actors read it, but like the save the cat moment is the thing that makes, even if you're a villain, it's like, oh, now you care about this character because you saw them be kind one time, and like now you're
and there's
a little
so
more
many
invested.
ways. Like if you, I recently rewatched Ex Machina. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. You really like that movie, right? Or did I make that up?
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, I think
I'm just a fan of Alex Garland. And
I really like that movie too.
Yeah.
The girl who's in it is like a professional ballerina.
Yeah.
And she's really good in everything I've ever seen her in.
Yeah.
She's like this Dutch actress. I think, actress.
I can't
She was
remember-
also
I can't remember- I don't
Tomb
remember her
Raider.
name. What's her name?
Vikander,
Alicia Vikander.
Yeah.
But anyway, in the opening scene of that movie, or like one of the opening scenes of the movie, the guy who's there to like basically do the Turing test, and he's like flying to this guy's property. If you read the screenplay, there's like 2 pages of dialogue between him and the helicopter pilot, where he's basically like telling him how rich and famous and big this guy's land is. But if you watch the movie, the only thing that they say in the entire helicopter ride is he asks the helicopter pilot, when will he get to his property? And the guy says, we've been flying over it for 2 hours. Done. Like one line. And now
That
you know,
says
like,
all the
oh,
things.
this guy is a gazillionaire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even this guy who like, you know, wrote this incredible screenplay and like whatever, cut all that shit out, one line, you know all you need to know.
And
you
then
know
you're
what I mean?
like, oh, I'm never going to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
So I actually have to read really bad stuff to get motivated to do things.
Well, you're never gonna get, but like people like Alex Garland, have you ever heard him like talk about this stuff? He's like a genius, like an actual genius, you know, that just happens to write movies, you know, like.
I think practice goes a long way too, though, because even after like 10 years,
Kind of. But that,
practice with taste, because you know my one
Yeah,
favorite
yeah,
video
yeah.
with the whole, you had taste, but
Yeah.
then sometimes you see people who are with their stuff and you're like, oh, they don't think they have the taste part, but they really got the drive and like, you know, the follow through.
yeah, but I don't know, man. Like specifically with that movie, there's like, I've seen it now more than, I don't know, 5 times, and there's so many small things that are purposeful. Like for example, you've seen the movie, right? Like, you're
Yeah,
kind of
it's been a
familiar.
long time since I've seen it, but yeah.
All right, so like, you know, fucking spoiler alert if you haven't seen a 10-year-old movie at this point. Like one of the things that happens is like when he gets to the guy's property, before he's like actually shows him the AI or whatever, he like has to sign this NDA. And he signs the NDA, and then we like see him take his shirt off and stare in the mirror, and he's got like all these scars on his back, right? And usually we just like pass that by, and it's like, no, you're supposed to question whether he is the AI. Right? Like you're supposed to question if he's the one that's taking part in the Turing test, not the one performing the Turing test.
That's always like the question in like those types of movies and stuff.
So
too.
like stuff like that. And then like there's one thing that like I heard him say in like an interview about the movie, which I thought was crazy, was like the whole time like they're doing this Turing test, and the fact that she's like able to escape and make, you know, this person fall in love, like, all right, you passed, right? Like in theory. But he's like, I think the actual proof of consciousness in the entire movie is at the end, Ava escapes the compound. Ava's like the, you know, Alicia Vikander's character. She escapes the compound, looks back at nobody, and smiles. Because if you smile when nobody's watching, that's emotion.
Yeah.
You're not like performing for anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if it's impossible to be that good. Like that's such like, how do you know what I mean? Like you know how smart you have to be.
I mean,
like,
I even feel that way about Inception.
yeah.
Conceptually, like
Yeah.
when I watched that, I was like, how did you come up with this?
Yeah, Nolan's a freak.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's weird.
But then some of the other ones that he recently made, I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that one's weird.
Quit while you're ahead. I understand Tarantino and why he feels that way.
Yeah. I don't know. That latest one is crazy. What is that thing called? What's his
That
name?
says how much it was not. We didn't even watch it because everyone had
It's not
such
with a
not
T,
good
with an
reviews.
M. It's like one word. Oh, man. It's like the one where time travels forward and backwards.
Yeah, in
Tenet.
Yeah.
Tenet. Yeah, Tenet. You know what's crazy about that movie?
What?
They didn't reverse any footage. So everything you see that looks
I
in
never
reverse
saw it.
was shot in reverse. So like the fight scenes were like
they like choreographed it in reverse. What a pain.
Yeah. So every scene that any actor did that had to be shown in reverse, they had to do it also in reverse and learn it both ways.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is really
Yeah,
crazy.
everything.
Also, what a pain.
Insane. And it's all shot on 70mm
Can you
film,
imagine
which is
having
like
to throw a
$80
punch
a minute or
backwards?
whatever. Yeah.
Can you imagine having to do an S-mount armbar backwards?
Yeah. It was Denzel Washington's son. That's the guy in the movie, right?
I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, yeah. But he talked about it like it was a cool thing. I'm like, I think you're just a dick. Like you can reverse it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it'd be the same. But
Like why make things harder than they need to be?
That movie was weird. I've seen it a couple times and I don't get it. But
That's what everyone has said.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, I think they don't get it either.
it's like big budget Memento. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you already did it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
My husband likes Memento.
I like Memento. I think it's a good movie.
It's like one of Lucas's favorites. Am I correct? He's the one he's tried to make me watch. Like,
Yeah.
no lie, like 7-8 times to save our marriage. He's like, you need
you
to
like
watch
it?
this. I like it. I just also fall asleep.
Really?
In movies.
It's really good.
Look at him. He gets so
It's really
frustrated.
good. Have you seen when he draws? I'm going to talk to Lucas. The diagram of how he like basically crafted the storyline. He draws it like an oval, essentially, where like there's two concurrent narratives running, the color and the black and white, and they all go towards the same point in time, but in reverse. And it's like, I don't know.
Lucas had he had very few movies when I met him, but on DVD with all the special edition stuff, he had Memento.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy because like that was his first movie, and it's like, a masterpiece. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it's so impressive when directors are like that. There's this one, I think I told you about it, but there's like a Latin anthology that I've watched, and the last one is so good because it's it's called Wild Tales in English, or Relatos Salvajes. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. In Spanish, it's like an Argentinian. There's six different like little short films in it. The last one is just so dark and funny, and it's like 20 minutes long, and I loved it. I looked up the director, and he didn't really do anything else
Really?
before or after. Like he has like some other stuff, but like Lucas and I loved it so much. Like we've watched it with so many people, and we just thought it was so good. And I was just like, wow, I just like wish this person is like had the opportunity to make big budget movies or something like that.
Well, you've probably heard this. It's like you have your whole life to make your first thing, and then a year to do the second one.
This is actually true with like books, because it's like, imagine like writing a novel, but then you have to do 3.
Yeah.
I think they're all like, all the book deals are like in 3s, and it's weird because, like there's authors that I like, and I remember when their debut book came out, and they've come out with so many since then. I'm like, how are you punching those out?
Yeah, and they're usually probably not as good if I had
not
to
as
guess,
good. Probably had a ghostwriter and then just kind of like tweaked it a little bit.
I think movies is different, but it's like artists express that a lot, like musicians and stuff. Like you have your whole life for your first album, and then it's like, all right, we'll make another one now. So it's like, how do you do that? You just had like...
You got to be unsuccessful for 8 years and just be like churning out stuff.
Bad shit.
Bad shit.
But the thing is, you don't get to make like bad movies.
Yeah, not with the money on the line. This is one of the issues.
Because you just won't get funded.
Yeah, this is one of the issues in Atlanta. I feel like on every set that I've been on is just being behind schedule and over budget.
Really?
For everything. I mean, like most of my stuff has gotten cut out simply because of time. Like the shot that they ended up getting was like they had like one chance at it, the sun was coming up, or my scene was cut entirely because they were days behind. Like when I showed up on set, I found out. And so just like things like that, and then you look and like the director's like relatively new. They haven't like done that much stuff, but they had like one good thing and then got this like, 4-part thing on.
You know what's interesting too though? Like I feel like, and this is maybe uneducated, but I feel like if the story is good enough, none of that will matter and the thing will get made,
That's true.
Like if it's actually good enough.
Well, I mean, one of the
like
sets,
it could be in black and white.
One of the sets that I was on that like it was really behind. My friend was on a different set that the same director was doing, and it was also really behind. It looks like they got another project, so I guess
really?
it didn't really matter.
Huh.
Yeah, he was on like a 3-episode thing, or 3 or 4-episode thing that, and then it was the same director, and he was like, "Yeah, we were super behind too." So.
Huh. Yeah. That's my actual writing goal, is to write a screenplay that gets optioned or made.
I was like, very possible. There's a lot of, sometimes you just got to even format it correctly for it to not go in the garbage bin.
Yeah, but I feel like that's the easy part. I don't know. Like it's actually hard to write a good story. You know what I mean?
I also think that there's like crazy politics with packaging and stuff. I don't really understand how that works, but my understanding from when there were different like lawsuits and strikes and like other things, it's like there's like weird stuff that goes on with the studios and the way that they do.
It's also like you have to write an original story, like if we're talking about like a spec script, right, where like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a thing that you got like paid to write by a studio and you want like somebody to buy your spec script, it also, you have to write like an original story in the right time. Because like, for example, like if you wrote the movie like Panic Room after the pandemic, nobody's buying a movie about somebody in a room after the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're like, there was my thing.
Yeah, but if you wrote like Lost that takes place outside or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So like it also like has to be in the right moment.
I've also heard
But-
that people who really like original stuff are the ones who struggle with getting their stuff made.
Yeah.
Because if you can write like a good spec script for an existing like sitcom, like that's what
Yeah.
a lot of people do. They'll like write stuff even for the exercise of it all to just have a portfolio to be like, look, I can understand like all these
Yeah.
different characters in their world.
That's how
and
you get on TV. I've heard.
Yeah.
You write an episode of the thing.
that feels so stressful. Would you want to like write on TV if like the
Yeah, I
opportunity
would be in
presented?
a writer's room for sure.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
but it, like also
It
like
just seems like so in my mind I'm just envisioning so much caffeine.
really, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but honestly, like the goal would be like, I would just want to write film. I think, you know, but
Yeah.
also like, there's only ever been like one example in like call it like Hollywood or stuff that got made of somebody writing a TV show by themselves for the most part, and it was True Detective season 1. Like this guy Nick Pizzolatto wrote 8 episodes. I think all the screenplays were like 600 pages total alone.
That's crazy.
By himself, no writer's room. But what you got is like one of the most interesting character interpretations for 2 different characters ever. And
You
if it
know-
was a writer room, there's no way he gets to do that.
You know, one of my other favorite, I mean, showrunners have a lot of power, I think, too, but like creators of shows or whatever. But I like one of my favorite stories is the dude who did Chernobyl.
Oh yeah, he wrote The Hangover.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my favorite thing.
Yeah.
But comedy writers are just
Well,
so
he said
cool.
that. He's like,
Yeah.
once you've written comedy, drama's easy.
Yeah,
It's
but
hard
it
to
was
write something to make
so
people laugh.
good because I'm like it was so dark and
was
whatever.
incredible.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
That was like one of my favorite series. The acting was great. Also,
Really good.
this is like when they first started shooting things to feel like that time period because Stranger Things was like kind of new
Yeah,
back then
yeah.
too, and they had that. And I'm like, this legitimately feels like the Soviet Union
Yeah.
in like the 80s. Like
Yeah.
the culture felt correct. Like the
It was all so
set.
good.
Yeah, there's so many components, and then like the fact that he ended up writing less than what he's like. I found out later that you get paid per episode for these types of things, and then I
Yeah.
ended up cutting. I was like, oh, I don't really need that, and they're like, okay.
No, that's incredible. Yeah, Chernobyl's really good. But it is crazy that he wrote The Hangover. But
Yeah, I think that's like the cool thing about versatile writer. There's a blog. I want to say like the person who wrote it, the name of the blog, it was like a UCB writer from like Upright Citizens Brigade, the improv school that also does like a bunch of sketch writing and stuff. But I want to say it was like writing cartoons in your underwear or something like that.
Huh.
It was like the person whose blog it was.
Yeah.
I want to say she was like a writer on one of the Powerpuff Girls like
Yeah.
cartoons.
Uh-huh.
And she was just talking about the whole process of like how much shit you need in your portfolio to become a writer and how
Really?
long it takes in LA. And it was like, it takes about 8 years of just like really just hammering out tons and tons of pieces so that when someone finds you, you have like a bunch of stuff in your portfolio.
Yeah.
And I looked at that, I was like, I don't know if I like writing
or
that.
one really good one.
Or one really
Yeah,
good
like,
one.
it just takes one.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
you can feel it because I have friends now who I feel like are relatively successful, like in the acting industry. But even when I knew them like 8 years ago, I'm like, this person's probably gonna make it. You can feel it when they're like on stage and like the stuff that they come up with, and then when you watch all of their different improv and they're just like so consistent. Or sometimes I get paired with them in an audition, and I'm like, they're really good.
Yeah. That's how it feels with anything, I feel like.
Yeah,
Even in sport
you can
or
feel that in
whatever.
like jujitsu. You're like, this kid.
Will be
Like we
good.
have like a little white belt. He's a grown man, but like
Yeah.
we have a white belt at our gym, and he moves better than I did. Like early into blue belt, and I'm like, you're gonna be fine. And he's
Yeah.
like doing all the private lessons, and like after every single roll with everybody, he's like, what can I do to improve? Like he's just
Yeah.
definitely has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I don't know. It's also like it's funny too, like because screenwriting is like such a cool way to like write whatever ideas you want to get out and make people think it's like, oh, it's a detective show or whatever. But like actually no, you're just like writing about your ideas on, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
or like I like to I think my favorite thing to do, even when I like write my novels that no one will ever see, is I like to make the villains and the heroes of things. Because if there's like a behavior I don't like, I like to put it in the villain character, even if it's like my own behavior. Like sometimes I separate my own behavior and like, oh, this is good. This is what I would hate for people to see if
Yeah.
they like didn't know me. And I'm like, I can put that in like good and like bad and like split that kind of thing up. Like someone will just do something douchey, and I'm like, yeah, that's
yeah.
easily.
And it's also like every character that's ever been good in movie or TV in general, they have an underlying philosophy of what makes them behave a certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they don't, that's when you have characters where people are like, oh, that character feels like dull or flat.
Or so
like,
unjust. Like everything they do feels like so unjustified.
So like any character, you're like Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, Matthew McConaughey in True Detective, like Peter Dinklage, and like all these characters, like there's an underlying whatever that philosophy is that drives them.
And I feel like that's also why Game of Thrones was so good, is it came from books, and books I feel like expound upon a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. But even like, you know, I don't know, like Breaking Bad or something, all the characters, and they're all so good, there's an underlying thing. You know what I mean? And they can behave however, and it just like, it comes out natural because that's part of who they are.
Who are some of your favorite characters and things?
My favorite characters and things. Oh, that's a really good question. Like
It's
TV
okay,
or
because
movie?
I can't, if you ask me this question right now, I wouldn't
TV
be
or
able to.
movies?
It doesn't matter.
No, narrow
Whatever.
it down to help me.
Let's say, I guess movies from like that shaped you growing up or something. If you like think of a character that you're like, I remember this.
Okay, like I could say like Robert De Niro's character in like Men of Honor. Have you seen that movie?
It's been so long, but yes, everyone's seen Men of Honor.
Yeah,
Okay.
like maybe that movie was like big growing up, or like I don't know. There's so many characters that are so good. Or like anything that Denzel has done, like Denzel's character in Training Day. Is
Well,
like,
he hasn't really done anything in a long time, I feel like.
that's not true. He made Fences like a couple years ago.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's still like, what is that, before COVID?
Maybe.
Maybe that's why it feels...
He's been making Equalizer movies, which are low-key kind of good.
Okay.
What else in terms of characters in movies? I don't know about my favorite, but like well-developed. I mean, like anything that Daniel Day-Lewis did has been incredible. Like,
Yeah,
you know
that's
what
true.
I mean? Like There Will Be Blood is like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like,
What is it, Gangs of New York?
Yeah, or like, Gangs of New York, There Will Be Blood, like Lincoln, like all those. I mean, Lincoln is a real person, so it's not like, doesn't really count, but fictional characters, I don't know. And then in TV, like, you know, Walter White in Breaking Bad, or honestly, like, so you've seen Silicon Valley, the comedy show?
I've seen... Well, I can't say that I'm well versed in the show, but yes.
There's a lot of really good characters in that.
Okay.
And it's because they're all comedians, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And comedy's a little different, but yeah, maybe that, or in Game of Thrones, honestly, my favorite character in Game of Thrones probably.
I liked who was it? The guy who was like the man for hire for Tyrion.
Oh, yeah.
He's like my favorite. He's also in
1923.
Have you watched the like Yellowstone 1923, 18, whatever?
No. God, what's his name in Game of Thrones? God damn it.
He's in 1923,
Oh,
and
is he?
he's like such a different character. I mean, he's still like of his type. He plays like this like Irish like shepherd guy in like Montana.
Yeah.
And like he very much is like a communist leader type of thing for but not communism. Just like you could tell he's like he coordinates or gathers people to do a thing.
Interesting.
And he's that kind of like leader, and he just is so good at it. And I'm like, that actor's so great at like playing those types of roles. But I loved him in Game of Thrones. He was so like funny and endearing and all that kind of. There's so many good characters in that though.
In Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's cheating because there's like thousands of subtext. You know what I mean? Like it's a book, so it's like, you know. But yeah, those are really good characters. I'm trying to think of. I feel like I'm forgetting so many because you put me on the spot, but.
I know. It's always hard to just jump to Game of Thrones and be like, oh yeah.
I mean, I've been talking about True Detective the entire, but like it's really good, and it's because like McConaughey's character has like it's basically a show about two people in a car talking, disguised as a detective show.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that's
that
really
idea.
what it is.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll have to watch
and
it.
And it's two people with like totally opposing philosophies in life. One guy is like the pursuit of pleasure, essentially, is what driving him, and the other guy is basically like his. People will call it like nihilistic, but it's not. It's almost like realistic in the sense that he's like, people only behave the way they behave because they're being watched, and people are not inherently that good, you know? And he's like skeptical of everything. But he's also like in pursuit of
Leave me
like,
alone.
Yeah.
My personality type is skeptical.
But it's also like very like virtuous, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like his character is almost like stoic. He's like virtue is the only way and everything else doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's actually a type on the Enneagram. It's called the idealist.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, where everything has to be like, they're like the Joan of Arcs of the world.
Yeah.
Where like, this is what you know.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's that, but it's really good. It's a deep expert. It's really good. And it also has like so many good one-liners delivered by McConaughey.
That's like the thing is like good drama, but even when it's like dark and whatever, when it's funny. That's why Tyrion's so talented in Game of Thrones, is because it's like all these horrible dark things, and even when he's like his guy gets like his eyes punched out, like his face is just so good.
Yeah, and I mean, even that, like, they obviously had the subject, but they had to, like, write the dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, the dialogue is really good. And then they, like, lost it in season 8. Totally. But, yeah.
They didn't. It's like Lost. Lost was great all the way to the end.
I haven't seen Lost, so don't.
I don't know. It spoiled itself.
Really?
It's just like Game of Thrones. Everyone, when we were watching Game of Thrones, we were just like, I hope it doesn't go like Lost. And then it did.
Well, because they just, like, the writer's room changed, and then it was just like, shit.
You also trust that this is like a thing that they say in improv too, is like, if there's an it on stage that no one defines, the longer you take to define it, it better be fucking good. Is like, the it has to be good. So like, if there's like some mystery thing that you're talking about, just name it, just call it a typewriter, do something early, because like the longer that you wait, if you're not genius, it's going to be harder to define. Well, and that, I feel like, has happened to those two shows, is like they had so much built up, and then of like, course, it's hard to wrap up in the end.
Well, it's also like Tarantino talks about this, but it's like, as an audience, you're willing to be confused as long as you feel like you're in good hands. But the second your audience feels like they're not in good hands anymore, you will not accept confusion.
I think I think we had watched an interview. This is like 2009. We had watched like an interview with the Lost writers that was on TV, and like they had said they didn't know where they were going.
Yeah.
And then we were like, but you made it seem like such a plant. Hello, Arya. You made it seem like such a plant that you like, planted all these things that you like find later, and then you tell us.
What is that? Excuse me. Jesus Christ. That literally term, not like it's like Chekhov's gun, where it's like, if there's a gun, there has to be a reason for it by the end of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There can't just be a gun.
I have not heard that term, but I'll have to look it up, and it sounds about accurate. Yeah.
Like, you can't just put something in there for the purpose of it just being there. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be a reason for it.
Look, everyone's figured this out, and then here we are still being like, we all knew these were the rules.
Yeah.
You knew you were going to piss us all off.
It's hard to write. You know what I mean? Like, I don't blame any of them.
Yeah,
You know
it's hard
like,
to create a world or a story.
I would have done worse, for sure.
Yeah, I would have done worse. We're like saying this from the comfort of our armchairs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like armchair quarterback.
How dare
for
you
sure.
mess up the series that
I
brought
do find
us.
it funny how critical people are of like TV and movies. It's like, dude, you have no, you know what I mean? Like,
I always am just blown away that they could do anything. Like, sometimes when I'm watching stuff and I'm just watching a simple dialogue scene, or even if I read some stuff, like there was one comedy show that I auditioned for, and like my friend had auditioned to, and like we film each other's like auditions, and I remember every time I read it, I was like, this show is written so good, and then I watched it on a plane and it was not good.
Really?
It was because the comedy, like the editing, I don't think was right, because when I read it out loud, like with Lucas, and I read it like out loud with my friend, I was laughing so hard at the script, and then when I watched it, it just was like flat.
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh, there's so many pieces to this, you don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I couldn't even pinpoint, was it the actors, was it, and I'm pretty sure it was the editing was just flat.
Really?
Yeah, the timing for it felt completely off.
Yeah, it's a little different with comedy too.
Yeah, so many other places. But even drama that has like drama that has like the little comedic points, like gosh, that's like such a skill.
There's nothing that doesn't have comedy in it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You need comedy, because otherwise, like, dude, what am I watching? Like,
That's like really bad kids movies.
what's a bad kids movie?
I'm thinking, I want to say it was like Jack and the Beanstalk, or one of those like, one of the ones that everyone didn't really watch. It was like not Pixar, because we're so used to like Pixar and like Disney and all these other things. Sometimes when I watch like these like fantasy like kids movies and there's just none of that, you're like, oh, this is just so hard to sit through.
Yeah, that stuff's hard to write. Like The Incredibles, like that screenplay, like it's so good.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
so
Toy
good.
Story.
Yeah.
Like you go back through and you're like,
And it's just like a hero's journey. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's all like the same, but it's
Finding Nemo.
like, all of it. Yeah.
I mean, all the like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
It hits like every single hero's journey beat. You know
Have
what
you
I mean?
watched Inside Out?
No.
Inside Out's really cute.
Really?
Yeah, it also took me years to watch it. I know that they just came out with a second one, which I haven't seen, but the first one is just like so. I cried so
It's
hard.
animated, right?
Yeah, it's animated. I'm not even gonna say the part, but it's just like technically like the emotions that are inside your brain.
Okay.
Like so, like there's like a little anger and there's like a little joy and a little like sadness, and they all have like their roles in your.
And those are the characters.
Those are the characters, yeah. So they're like these little like there's like a pixie looking thing for Joy, and she's like out there wrangling everybody and being like really.
Oh, speaking of all-time movie characters, Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men, the Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, Lucas
that's
is
got to be
nodding,
like
yeah.
all time, like for sure.
This is a
Maybe
moment
the
Lucas needs a microphone.
Maybe the best psychopath or villain in movie history.
Lucas has.
I gotta chime in on this.
Yeah.
He was just so great. The gas station scene.
It's insane.
I watched that scene
So
on
many times.
YouTube.
So many times.
Just because I was like,
Miramax
what?
uploaded it. Like in
Dude, what a psycho!
It's
like,
insane.
Like where he was sitting there, he's like, where he eats the peanuts. And he's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and you're like, did he mean to do that?
Yeah.
Or like, is he just being a crazy person right now?
It's also like they do such a good job. Like, do you remember he like eats the peanuts, he like
Yep.
shrinks the wrap, and
Yeah.
then they let the sound of the wrapper
Yeah.
unfold. You know what I mean? Like the tension. You know what I mean?
And then
it's
like,
so good.
You know what? And I also don't want to put past the guy who was reciprocating
yeah.
that. He was so good.
He's
being
like us.
nervous. I'm getting
Yeah.
goosebumps.
Yeah.
He was so good being like,
Yeah.
we're closing.
He asked
Closing
him, he's
now.
like-
now about now. We close now. You're like, he was sounding like
Yeah.
he was scared.
He's like, "Do you live out back?" And you could tell he's like, "Why is he asking me this?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah.
And then like it's funny too because like the shifting point of the scene is like when he basically asked him if he inherited the business.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, this is we lived
You
in
married
Plano."
into it.
Yeah. He's like, "You married into it." He's like, "I wouldn't say that." And he's like, "So what would you say?" And you could tell the old guy's like, "Oh shit! Like I'm dealing with a crazy person."
Oh,
You know what I mean?
What a just
Yeah. Have you not?
great scene. Great scene.
Have you not seen?
I don't
this?
know. When Lucas tries to make me watch stuff, my body is just like, no. It's like when someone
Really?
tells you to do the dishes.
It's speaking about like creating tension. That scene is like it's like 2 minutes long.
What year is this movie? It's old.
No
right?
Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Like
10 years at
2012 maybe.
Yeah,
2000 Yeah,
2012.
something like that.
Okay, I'll have to
But
watch
it's like
it.
it's insane. Yeah, like
I'll watch
and also
it.
like the Coen Brothers, they didn't use a soundtrack. I don't know if you remember this. There's no soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
There's no
audio.
music. Oh, so that makes it weirder.
Not even weird, but like the way they use sound
Intense.
is
Intense.
it's so like they like flip a coin as part of the scene, like the whole gag, and he's like, "Call it," and he's like trying to get him to call it. Essentially, say like, "I'm gonna kill you" or not.
Yeah.
He never actually says it, and he's like, "Call it," and like the sound of the quarter like spinning, like, it's like, oh man,
Makes a huge difference.
oh yeah.
I noticed that too the second time because I watched 1917 again with Lucas after I saw the screen.
Is there
with
no
my friend.
soundtrack?
No, there is, but I realized how much of a difference the sound because they just like have like this crescendoing music when they're walking around like that big crater thing.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't even notice the music the first time I watched it, but the second time because I had a second chance to go watch it, I realized how much of a difference like the music.
No
made.
Country for Old Men, by the way, is also Roger Deakins, the same 1917 Shawshank Redemption. It's the same cinematographer. So it's like there's so many movies that you would think it's like it's like actually part of what makes it so good is how it was shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have like no control over that if you're like an actor or anything else
No.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get cast
If you
in-
get the really good stuff, it's always really good people you're working on it usually.
Yeah.
But that movie is like, dude, fuck, man. You know what movies like along those lines, but like a little bit different is Hell or High Water. Have you seen that? Have you seen that? It's a really good movie.
I
Also
apparently
like
am
a
like
Western.
movie and illiterate.
Yeah, that one's really good. Everything the Coen Brothers have done, though, that's not a Coen Brothers movie, but everything the Coen Brothers have done is like, it's must watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to go. I know that there's lists of like must see movies, and I feel like I need to go back through and watch them because recently we watched like Casablanca because it was always like in the screenplay books, and we were like so mind blown at how good it was when we were.
Yeah.
I know. But like sometimes when you watch old stuff, there's a
Well,
lot
like
of
Gone
old stuff.
with the Wind and shit. Like, nah, it kind
Well,
of doesn't.
Gone with the
it's
Wind
rough.
drags.
It's rough.
Yeah.
It's like 4 hours long.
Dude,
Yeah, it's
like this
4
is where
hours
I
long.
like want to be like a
But then
creative.
you watch like Titanic and you're like, oh fuck.
I always
like-
thought Titanic was cool. Like
No, but even like
I was in fourth grade.
It's so good. Like it's so
Yeah.
well written. It's so like the story's good. It's all there. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
there's
what I
nothing-
wish I had was just like a small speaking role in a movie like Titanic.
Really?
That just like comes back years later.
Yeah, that movie like I could talk about No Country for Old Men forever, but that is like. And speaking of like characters with an underlying philosophy, the reason it's so good is because there is an underlying thing that drives them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a scene in the movie where he's sitting down with one of like the FBI investigator people, who's actually played by Woody Harrelson. Who's
I
also
love
in,
Woody
He's also in
Harrelson.
True Detective.
He's someone I would actually be legitimately
Yeah.
like fangirl over. I think would you ever get starstruck over people?
Depends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Me too. I like. There's very few.
Probably like weird people. Like if I saw like certain movie writers or things in person. Like if I saw Alex Scott, like people who not the actors, but like,
Yeah, yeah. Like
But there's a scene and he basically like either in the scene and this Anton Chigurh's character or Anton Chigurh played by Javier Bardem, he basically like says to him like if the choices that you've made or if the rules that you've held by your entire life have led you to this point. What good were the rules? And he's like about to kill him. And you're like, oh fuck, like you know what I mean? Like this holds up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
all the way through.
it's not just
Lucas
crazy.
is just losing his mind.
It's not just crazy for being crazy. You know what I mean? Because that's like all those bad movies. You're just like people are just like killing people for no reason. You're like, this is not good.
No,
like there's nothing to it. Like
that
you know
was
what I mean?
also like one of mine and Lucas's big pet peeves is we're just like movies have just like downer endings for no reason, and it's like, oh, you just couldn't wrap this up.
Yeah,
it wasn't like underlying or something that had.
You ever like? Are you familiar with like the like old like Asian or Chinese movie endings? They're not like they're purposely unsatisfying. Like they don't give you what you want. You know what I mean? Like in Shawshank Redemption, it would be like if they never reunite. Like he just like dies in jail. Like you know what I mean? Like it just you know what I mean? Like kind of like that. It's really like it's fucked.
I wonder why we go through like cultural phases where we go through that. Is it just like I don't know, everything got worse, or
it's like
people are trying to be different.
Well, I don't know, but like you have like the thing in Hollywood now where like every movie's like gotta have a gay dude.
They have like a formula.
Yeah, there's gotta be certain things. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to make certain movies today. Like Reservoir Dogs doesn't get made. Pulp Fiction doesn't get made.
Absolutely
like none of
not.
those. But those are great movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, even this is like one of the things because we really like Jojo Rabbit. Like if you looked at that on paper. Really, it's Taika Waititi, is that his name? Mm-hmm. He's just have you watched like the other shit that he did? What was it? What We Do in the Shadows? Or
no,
right? Because it was What We Do in the Shadows. I don't know why I'm like second guessing everything that I'm saying because it's 9:00 at night. But yeah, we like really love Jojo Rabbit, and he like plays Hitler.
Oh shit!
Yeah, he is walking around like a figment of this kid's imagination as Hitler, and I was like, can you imagine being like even like that little boy's mom being like looking at this material? I was like, is this going to get wildly canceled? Like when they did it, but it's one of my favorite movies.
It's also like part of the problem with. Excuse me, I'm like burping.
It's because we gave you this like acid-inducing coffee.
Yeah, no, but like part of the problem is like in order to like for you to make a character, the antidote to a good character is political correctness, because then they have no personality in either direction.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They don't have a strong enough point of view.
And like you're in this wave of like political correctness where like no good character ever could be politically correct.
Yeah,
it's a boring person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean this character doesn't have any flaws?
Or even like movies where they're just like preachy, where like we get it. We get that you have a platform.
That was the problem with the DiCaprio movie where it was like everything is falling or what's it called? Like
the sky is
falling, whatever. Like that's the problem. Like,
I didn't watch it, but I took one look at that.
Thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a thing
and
that they're trying to...
And they don't even do it like cleverly or funny or whatever. One of my favorite things about Jojo Rabbit is like he obviously has a point of view about a lot of different things, but it's just like so well written, like it can go in any direction. And like I also just like the symbolism. It might even seem too obvious to some people, but it's just things like they put up posters, and then like towards the end of like the Germany like falling apart, the posters are like peeling off the wall. Like there's just like the arc of like some of that kind of stuff that was through it. I just thought was really cool, and the kids are super freaking cute. Like the kids there's like a little British kid that's like doing the main German boy, and then his best friend is just this adorable little kid too. So, we hit an hour. Oh no, this is why we need a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a 3-hour podcast.
I don't know how to end a podcast still, but we have hit our time. Thank you for coming on my show, Ernesto.
It's over.
It's over. We'll have to have a
cut.